very good evening to our speaker, Dr. S. Suraj, and all the participants. COVID-19, this pandemic has truly disrupted every one of our lives, may it be with regard to clinical practice or academics. All of us are affected in one or the other way. So it has also impacted the way dentistry has to be dealt with. So in this regard, our speaker, Dr. S. Suraj, is going to speak on post-COVID-19, a time to shift to dental implantology. He'll be speaking on this topic and enriching our knowledge regarding how to deal with implantology in the post-COVID-19 era. In this juncture, I would like to welcome and introduce our speaker for the session of this Virtual Implant Expo 2020, session 7 of the day. Sir is a gold medalist for overall performance during the years 1995 and 2000 at Vinayaka Mission's Shankaracharya Dental College, Salem, and he underwent complete training in management of craniofacial trauma in Department of Craniofacial Trauma, the State of Alexander's Hospital, St. Petersburg in 2004. He was also special trainee at Department of Maxillofacial Surgery, Ulster Hospital, United Kingdom, in management of orofacial pain and trigeminal neuralgia. With his expertise and experience, today he is here with us to speak to us on this occasion. Sir, I hand over this session to you. I kindly request you to proceed with the presentation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashwin, for the sweet introduction about me. Nobody has introduced myself to the audience better than you. So thank you once again, Ashwin.
Thank you.
So to start the topic of the day, I'm luckily or unluckily the last speaker of today's session in the Dentist Channel online. So rather than taking other topics to deal with, this to be done in implantology, that to be done in implantology. So I thought, why not let me deal with this post-COVID scenario, because this COVID-19 has almost brought the world to a stop, and it is almost healing, and we are coming back to normalcy slowly. Probably the most affected profession in this COVID scenario, I would call to be is the dentistry, because leave the Western countries apart. Coming to the Indian scenario, most of them are afraid of opening their dental clinics in this post-COVID situation, because everybody is afraid, will I be infected if I'm going to treat a patient? Because there are no proven 100% test or any indication which would show you the patient who is sitting in your chair is going to be a carrier, even though he is asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. You don't know whether he's going to infect you or not. So there are thousands of theses, postulates, theories coming out during this post-COVID scenario. Initially they said it is only a droplet infection. They said it is a surface transmission is also there. Now the level has gone up, and now they are saying that it is going to be an aerosol based and even an airborne. So how are you going to deal with this? So to start with, are we really happy to practice dentistry during this COVID situation? If I'm going to throw this question to my fellow colleagues, they would definitely say this answer, no. If your answer is no, how are we going to financially stabilize ourselves? Because today's scenario in India, you need to be financially stable to run your family, to fulfill your commitments, etc. So what are you going to do? Are you a filthy rich fellow to sit idle for 4 to 5 months without practicing? Or are you going to go to your dental clinic, follow some of the protocols, basic protocols, proceed with your work and earn money? So if it is no, then why and what we want to do? You cannot close your dental clinics for a quite long time. So what do you want to do and why you want to do? The answer would be, I will do consultations and I will do emergency procedures. I will not do root canals or fixed partial denture preparations or my general scalings. I will not do it. Why? The word aerosol has made the dentist fear so much because the fear of aerosol generating procedures in dentistry is hyped so much. And to compare the general dental procedures like your root canals, your fixed partial dentures and scaling with the implant procedure, is dental implant a non-aerosol generating one? I would say no. It is also an aerosol generating procedure. See, even your laser procedures, they generate aerosol. So let us not think the word aerosol to be a more dangerous one. We need to equip ourselves to combat the aerosol which is being generated. It may be infected, it may be infestated, or it may carry your COVID virus, it may not. Nevertheless, you have to be equipped with a few standard operating protocols, and if you're going to perform dental implant, you are going to be safe. See, when you compare a normal dental procedure, which you do with your aerator handpiece, example, and crown cutting or an access opening for a root canal, that is going to create a big splatter because it is being connected to a compressed air. And when you see your implants, they are electrically driven, and the physiologic solution which is being pumped is not of that much force. So that wouldn't generate much of an aerosol. Is it what? See, before coming to the topic, this is all my experience with implants. I will not quote any he et al said this, she et al said this. It is all my perception, and it is how I practice implantology now during this post-COVID scenario. So when you compare an aerosol generated from an implant procedure to a normal conventional aerosol generated by a procedure during a root canal or a fixed processes, it is same. When you compare to a micro droplet which is generated during speaking, which is very less, and when you compare to the micro droplet and an aerosol which is being generated during sneezing or coughing, which is more. So this is how I compare the aerosol generated during implant and the other procedures. So to give a brief idea, let me play you a small video. Here is what is happening is a procedure done by a normal regular aerator handpiece. I am trying to open the access for a root canal procedure. So can you see the amount of aerosol or the splatter which is that the splatter is very, very high. The splatter is very, very high. So now I would show you a procedure where I had placed an implant. 1 minute. Where is my maximize? Yeah. Here you are seeing a procedure of a dental implant, which took hardly more than 10 minutes for me to place. So here you can see that my pilot drill is going in. I have not edited any part of this procedure. That's the pilot drill going on. And you can see very well in this video that there is no splatter which is happening. I have shown you the complete A to Z of a surgical implant placement. So next comes my second guide drill. You can see that the saline is also being pumped and there is no splatter, and probably a very minimal aerosol generation from the patient mouth during this implant procedure. And here comes the implant being driven into the osteotomy site. And after that driven, you can see that I have not skipped any drilling sequence or nothing, and I have achieved 74 in the ISQ meter, which is, you can load it immediately. So this is what, when you compare a regular aerosol, which is being generated from a normal root canal procedure with a dental implant, the dental implant scores a very low quotient. So you can very well do a dental implant without fear of any aerosol being produced, provided you take the proper standard operating protocols. So if I say that the dental implantology produces less of aerosol, can I skip my standard operating protocols? No, you cannot skip the standard operating protocols. Standard operating protocols to the operator is your mask, your surgical mask, your eye gears, your face shields, and your upper body cover. This is what we call as the standard operating protocol for the operator. And see, the standard operating protocol, what we have seen or how it has evolved during this post-COVID protocol. The first picture shows my operator just with a mask, a gloves, and the doctor apron. But post-COVID, we were forced to go into this moon suits. This is what I call them, the PPEs, which were laminated. You have to wear an eye shield, then you'll have to wear your surgical mask or your N95, your FFP2 or FFP3s, and provided you have a good face shield. And after some time, they said your lower body cover is not necessary. So we had gone to the next level where you had the eye cover, your mask, your head cap, and your upper body cover. With the face shield again, you can see here that after the face shield, one nice gadget I found to be useful, very cheap. I do not want to spend more on my 1 lakh, etc., on my positive pressure ventilation mask, this, that. One good thing, one small gadget, what I found is this 360-degree protection face shield. You can see that it is comprising of a face shield. You have 360-degree of protection given. This just cost me around 150 rupees. I usually use this during my implant procedures. So you have to run your dental clinic. You have to earn your money. So now you are planning to do your implants. You are going to start doing implants. If you have not done implants in the earlier, take this time, utilize this time, try to convert your patients into profitable implant patients, because you are anyway afraid to do fixed processes. So convert the patient. Now the patient will understand why you are converting him into an implant. So what are the golden rules you're going to follow this post-COVID scenario? You have to follow your standard operating protocol. You cannot skip, even though dental implantology is safe, this, whatever I say, you cannot skip your standard operating protocols, which you follow in your dental clinics. Next is you have to minimize the time duration of the procedure. Consider every patient to be a positive COVID patient. So you have to minimize the time of your procedure. What I feel is 15 minutes of time during procedure is more than enough, or is what the maximum you could be staying with your patient. Restrict long dental aerosol generating procedure. Even if being an dental implant, I don't want you to go ahead with an all-on-4, which is going to take a bit longer time. So utilize this scenario, convert your patient into profitable dental implants, and skip your fixed partial dentures, because in the future, dentistry is going to be ruled by implants. Next is your environmental sterilization. You have to do fogging or sterilization of your environment. This is what I call the best method is fogging by quaternary ammonium compounds, which is what I follow. You have to sterilize your environment. Choose your patient. You have to do your antibody test for your patients. See, antibody tests have now come handy. 550 rupees per test. You would definitely know if he is an infected patient who is having immunoglobulin G. If he is having immunoglobulin G, you can very well proceed with your procedures. If he is a control patient, you don't know whether he is newly infected in the past recent 4 days or 5 days. Take the protection gears and you can do it. If he is on an immunoglobulin M, have to wait for a bit long, probably for another 14 days. And don't spend too much on the gadgets. See, I'm not a gadget man. Like my face shield was costing around like 150 rupees. That gave me a very good protection. And I felt that there is no point in spending too much on your gadgets. For example, an extra oral suction. It's very good to have an extra oral suction, but post your procedures, the condensation sweat which comes out from this extra oral suction is a mess to manage. So there is no point in having an extra oral suction. And we are going to start implants. You are going to quit your FPDs. You are going to start implants. Why are we hesitating? Number one is the cost. Number two, how am I going to convert? Now it is easy to convert a patient. I'm not trained to do implants. Fear of failure. How is my supplier going to be? And why to take a risk when I'm happy with FPD? Now you have to convert your patient because the fear of corona is there. So the third point, I'm not trained to do implants. Implantology, believe me, is not rocket science. If I can do an implant, why not you? You can do an implant. Follow the few simple steps. When you are starting implants, I would give you a handful of tips. Just follow them. Do as per protocol. You will definitely have a positive implant success. Or everybody says, you gave a good lecture, sir. Finally, you gave the complications. On seeing those complications, now I am a bit afraid. The complications are nothing. It is same as how you face during an extraction. If you're going to see pain, swelling, paresthesia, dehiscence, cover scraps, all these things are going to happen in any of your surgical procedures. Even in your FPDs, these type of failures are going to happen. Forget about them. Know how to manage them. If you're going to do your implants in a proper way, maintaining the guidelines, you would not face any of this, right? So coming to the basic dental implantology, you are going to start with your patient. You just have 15 minutes of time with your patient for placing the implants. You can do a single tooth replacement. You can do a multiple implants on a previously extracted socket, or do a single tooth replacement after atraumatic extraction. What is an atraumatic extraction? Don't disturb the adjacent bone, the buccal cortex or the palatal bone. Don't disturb them. So coming to the components of the implant, this is for the people who don't know what are the components. The fixture, the abutment, cover, screw, healing. I think probably this has been covered by a lot of speakers in this gentle channel online. And these are the pictorial representation of the above components. The types of implants, there are various types of implants available, and number of implants are available in the market now. They call them the active, non-active, cylindrical, conical, self-taping, non-self-taping, one piece, two piece. And with regards to the connection, they say it internal hex, external hex, conical, what are blah, blah, blah. Whoever can name their connection in whichever manner they want, they are naming it in so. So choose the best system. So as far as I know, a self-taping implant, two piece with a conical hex with a treated active surface is more than enough. For example, Norris is a very good implant. Next is your Dentium. What I use is a very good implant. You can use any implant system which you feel is good to you. Next, where are you going to start your implant practice? Post-COVID scenario, again, you don't want to mess with your patient. You do not want to prolong too much with the time. So where are you going to start your implants? Maxilla, mandible, in the anterior or the posterior region? Is it going to be an healed area or an extraction socket? What is the age? Do not take an patient who is having bruxism or who is having an uncontrolled diabetes. There are only three indications where I don't take an implant. Bruxer, uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, where is A1C is more than 7 to 7.5, and patient with osteoporosis who is on bisphosphonates. Maxilla or the mandible, where are you going to do? Check the type of bone, D1, D2, D3, D4, everybody knows it. Choose a D2 or a D3. So D2 and D3 mostly present in the anterior and the posterior mandible and in the anterior maxilla. So basically choose a patient in the mandible when you are starting your implants. Once you master the art, you can do implant wherever. Even you can do a zygoma, even you can do a posterior maxillary pterygoid implant. So before doing them, master the basic implantology. What are the gingival bite-ups? Basically just two, thin and thick. If it is going to be a thin, the implant should be a little bit away from the gingiva to prevent the gray shadow. If you are placing it a little bit anterior, in a long run, after the bone is going to resorb labially, you are going to get the gray shadow of the implant. If it is thick, you can place it a little bit anterior because the thick gingiva is going to mask the titanium shadow, which is otherwise called as the gray hue. When it is going to be a delayed or an immediate implantation, delayed is mostly preferred by a fresher. If you are going to start your implant practice during this post-COVID scenario, always take a healed site because you're going to spend your time to remove the tooth atraumatically. Initially, if you are not well versed with using the luxators or the periotomes, you might prolong the time duration. Immediate implantation, sometimes it is a favorable one if it is in the anteriors because you need to play with the pink part because this is the aesthetic zone. And in some instances, immediate implantation is beneficial. I'll show you a situation where there is a fractured premolar. The residual bone height is only 8 mm. If I'm going to extract this weight for healing, 30% of bone is going to resorb and I'm going to end up with a 6 mm bone post healing. So what I did, I pulled the tooth out and I placed an 8 mm implant, and you can see that the implant is just hitting the floor of the sinus. So at this place, I wanted to do an immediate implant to help the bone not to resorb. If it's left to heal, you will lose 30% of the bone during healing. And if you are going to do an immediate extraction implants, you have to check three things. One is the periapical status. If there is a huge lesion, don't try to do heroism over there. Can we achieve primary stability? The stability of the implant is depending on the post-apex bone which is remaining, and what is the amount and what is the quality of bone. If it is a D4, don't try to do an immediate extraction implant. If you are not going to get primary stability, you are going to fail now. What to see, how to see, things are the same for any case. The basic startups, the conventional methods and the novel methods. Basic startups are the histories, movements and any medication history. And coming to the site specific thing, you have to see the relation with the adjacent tooth, the occlusal clearance, that is more important. Do not initially take an implant patient who is having a less than 7 mm intraocclusal clearance. He should have more than 7 mm occlusal clearance. If it is going to be a less, then you have to play with your prosthetics. Overjet, overbite, complete deep bite cases where there is reduced overjet and overbite, don't take them during your initial phases of implants. Once you master it, then you can play. Then the amount of bone available. Check for the amount of bone available. Conventional methods, radiographs, bone mapping, digital, I think it should be, everything should be known by you because lots of webinars I've already taught them. I have initially done during my early phases, we used to do implants only with a conventional intraoral periapical radiograph. But now you have the CBCTs where you can very well measure, know where, how your implant is going to be. And when you are going to determine the size of the implant, you have to give considerations for these vital structures. One is the maxilla, then the mandible. In the maxilla, there are the nasal floor, the piriform rim, the sinus, adjacent tooth roots, and the incisive nerves and vessels, which is in the midline. And coming to the mandible, everybody knows it's the inferior nerve, alveolar nerve, the mantle foramen, the anterior lingual arterial anastomosis, which is present just in the anterior region, and the lingual aspect and the lingual fossa in case of a posterior. In case of an anterior or a posterior, which are you going to choose? It is going to be a bit of a challenge if you are going to choose your early implant procedures in the anterior zone, because this is called as the aesthetic zone, wherein you have to consider a lot of criteria to achieve a proper aesthetic result. If it is the posterior, you can play with your prosthetics and you can achieve a good relation. And you need to know the buccopalatal relation, the mesiodistal, the apicocoronal, and the implant angulations and the pre-op stents. These are more important. These are nothing but your regular removable partial dentures. You can see in the images following, how are they going to do? See, basically, if you are going to do an implant, remember the rule of 2. The remaining bone buccally from the implant should be 2 mm. On either side, buccally and lingually or palatally, it should be 2 mm. Adjacent teeth, it should be 2 mm away from the adjacent teeth. From the implants, 2 to 3 mm. You have to sink the implant apicocoronally 1.5 to 2 mm. So believe the rule of 2. See, this image would give you an idea where to place the implant. Place the implant in the center of the residual bone corresponding to your processes. You have to decide the place of the implant with regards to the final processes. Implantology is no more a surgical driven system. Now it is a prosthetic driven system where the dental implant is now called as the apical extension of your future processes. First, you plan your processes, then you can place the implant as per the prosthetic considerations. So, coming to the single surgical phase in an implant placement in a previous extracted site, the patient has extracted or lost his lower first molar, you are going to place an implant. That is the ideal case you are going to choose when you are placing an implant in your early stages. You have to master the art from such area, your lower molar, your lower premolar, your upper anterior laterals, your upper premolars. You can very well place the implants without any fear. Local anesthesia, incision design, everything is, should be, I mean, we don't need much of explanation in that. And these are a few cases where we did implants in previously healed socket. So you can see here the site, the implant being placed and the crown being delivered. These are straight away cases where you do not need much of an expertise to do a dental implant. So this is a step-by-step placement. This is what I meant to be a guide. So this thing is nothing but our regular RPD. Just make an RPD for your surgical site. In the center of the tooth, just drill a hole. This is going to determine the place of your implant in the bone, right? So you can see here, I had placed this RPD over here and I had made a punch. You can see the punch being made here. You can see where the implant should be, because the position of the implant is not dictated by the bone architecture. The position of the implant is dictated by your future processes. If you encounter a large variation, then you can play with your angled abutments, angled implants and everything. So this is a straightforward case where we made an removable partial denture. There is a punch being made, the drills being done, parallelism being checked, the final osteotomy. Then you have the torque wrench which is being driving, the cover screw in place and the sutures made. Looks pretty easy. Do it, it's pretty easy. Believe me, implantology is once again not a rocket science. You need not need to be a Neil Armstrong to do it. When I can do an implant, you can do. This is what I say in my lectures. And what is the difference when you are going to do in an immediate extraction site? You need to remove the offending tooth atraumatically. If you are well versed in removing the tooth with luxators or periotomes, use them, remove it atraumatically, and then you can place the implant. There are a few things to be watched here. Do you need a graft or a membrane? Check your jumping gap. What is the jumping gap? Jumping gap is nothing, is the distance between the lateral surface of the implant and your remaining bone. Again, the rule of 2 plays a role there. What is the rule of 2 again? If the gap is less than 2 mm, you need not graft. Wherever it is, if it is less than 2 mm, you need not graft. If it is more than 2 mm, you have to graft that area. Grafting is again, like I think yesterday many speakers have explained about GBR, bone grafting. So like basically when you're doing your initial stages, choose patients where you need to graft. I will show you one such case where here the lower 6 and 7 are offended. We have removed it. We have placed in first implant. The second implant is gone. You can see that I have achieved 70 NCM of torque in the implant in an extracted site. In an extracted site, achieving 70 mm of torque is really a mammoth task. But if you follow the proper protocols, choose the proper implant site, choose the proper implant design, you will definitely achieve it. That is the closure. And This is the image of a few cases. The offending premolar is being removed. The implant is very well been sunk below the residual alveolar crest by 1.5 to 2 mm. And here the molar has been removed. And here I have placed the implant just ahead, 2 mm ahead of my inferior alveolar nerve. I have sunk the implant and I did not graft it because I had enough of residual bone which is opposing my lateral surface of the implant. I don't need a graft here. My my clot will definitely take over later. What are the few things you need to note while doing an implant? Take series of RVGs. Check the drill depth and the angle. For every drill, you will have to check the drill depth and the angle. Place a paralleling pin always to verify the place of the implant during all steps. Note the gingival thickness. In case of an anterior, you have to decide if it is a thin or a thick type, then you'll have to slightly adjust the implant position. Always check the final placement by a radiograph. Wait or not wait. You have placed the implant. Conventionally, when you are starting your implant practice, don't open your site immediately. In the mandible, wait for 3 months. In the maxilla, wait for 6 months. But I go with the ISQ readings. If my ISQ reading during my initial implant placement is around 60 to 65, I tend to open my implant second stage in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, definitely, if I would have done a proper implant, it would definitely be more than 70 ISQ. If I could get a 74 ISQ in an immediate extraction site, as you saw earlier in the video, I would definitely achieve 70 plus in my second stage. But in some cases, you need to immediately load and temporize. See, for example, in this scenario, the patient has a deciduous retained canines, which are shaky. So we plan to remove them. We removed both the canines. Implants were being placed as per protocol. You can see the implants being placed, and we had to temporize the site just because of aesthetics, number one, and I wanted to get the gingival architecture or the pink part right on its point. So you could see that the temporary abutments are being placed and a temporary restoration is being done. So you can see on both the sides, the temporary restoration is done. Patient is happy, I am happy. When coming to the second stage, after 6 weeks or 3 months, how are you going to enter? I am going to show you a small video. Like I used to enter my second stages with laser. I do not open it up and suture again. If you are having your previous RPDs, which were made during the implant placement, you can place them again, make a punch, because that is the point where if you would have placed it at that point, so that is going to be the point where your implant is going to be beneath the bone, beneath the gingiva. So at that punch, just open your gingiva with the laser. You can see in this video, like it is very, very, very easy to open the implant site in the second stage with the laser. You don't need to give a nerve block or an infiltration. A local anesthetic gel, bupivacaine or even lignocaine would be more than enough. So it's very easy. You can see that how I am going into the bone, into the site. Slowly make an entry using laser. If you don't have a laser, you can go for a tissue punch, or if not, you can go with the BP blade. So after you removed the cover screw, you place a healing abutment. So this is the healing abutment placed, and this is the healing after 1 week. And after removing the healing abutment, you can see how the gingival collar has healed beautifully. What more than this you want in an implant, post-healing, second stage? Then comes your prosthetics. Prosthetics in dental implants is again a big story. We can speak for days together. Just I'll brush up. This is the impression post. I always prefer to go with an open tray impression. Sometimes I go with pickups. Your impression post transfer, the analog being fixed, send it to the lab. They would make you a prosthesis as per your requirement. So here we have made a prosthesis. We have fixed screw retained one. We have fixed it to the patient. You can see, since the implant was planned a little bit palatally, the screw exit was happening exactly on the cingulum, how it is supposedly to be in the anterior zone. And this is the type of result what you get post insertion of your prosthesis. The patient is happy. And when you are coming to the prosthetics, occlusal establishment is more and the most important thing in the success of an implant. Many people tend to place an implant, they tend to give a crown in an under occlusion. This is what mostly we used to do. We used to communicate to the lab, make it infra occlusion. Don't do infra occlusion. If you are not going to load the implant properly, you are going to end up in implant failure. Anything which is not used might lead to misuse or disuse atrophy. You are going to lose the implant. So there are a little bit of communications you need to give to the lab when you are going in the prosthetic phase. In the anteriors, reduce the occlusal load. In case of minimal occlusion, there should be no contact. When the patient is on heavy occlusion, there should be little bit contact on the palatal aspect. So reduce the palatal contour. In case of a posterior, everybody know what is a bull technique, upper buccal, lower lingual. It is the opposite. You reduce the palatal contour in the upper and the buccal contour in the lingual. This basically you are reducing the functional cusp width and you reduce the cuspal inclinations, because if you're going to give a good cuspal inclination, you're going to load the implant very much. Next is, do not cantilever any implant. Single implants, don't cantilever them. And do not give contact points. You give contact areas or contact phases. This is what you'll have to follow during your prosthetic phases. So this is just a diagrammatic representation where your primary contact should be, how your upper crown should be, how your lower crown should be. Next, a few cases to show immediate extraction cases where we have done premolar being extracted, initial osteotomy, parallelism being checked with the paralleling pin, implant being driven, that's the implant, the MF path fin, the exit path which has been checked exactly parallel, and here you can see the directly we have placed the healing abutment. There is no need of any entry incision or whatever it is during the second phases. If you have achieved a good primary stability, ISQ of around 60 to 65, you can very well place your healing abutments directly. Yet another case where we had placed 2 implants in the extracted sockets. You can see the 2 implants being placed in the extracted socket using our RPD as our stent. And this is yet another case which we did fractured lateral incisor and a missing central. Once it has been opened, you can see after removing the lateral incisor, you could see so much of bone dehiscence. We placed the implant here. You can see the implant is placed and there is an exposure of the implant. We very well gave a graft and a membrane is also being placed over there. You can see the bone graft being done. Here is the membrane being placed, suturing, and we gave an immediate Maryland type of a temporary, because it's being an anterior zone. And this is the immediate temporary result. What more you need than this? Nothing more, right? And I think let me show a few of my multiple implant cases. This is a case of an all-on-4. This is a case of an all-on-6 in the lower. All-on-6 being placed. That's the processes which we delivered. And that's the result. Patient is happy. And this is yet another case of all-on-4 in my upper and all-on-6 in my lower. Patient is almost in the terminal dentition. You can see. This is how he was. So we had to remove all his teeth. That is the immediate loaded temporary in an all-on-4 upper and an all-on-6 lower. So that is the result. Patient smiling. Yet another case of an all-on-4 upper and individual implant the lower. That's the impression jig to show the parallelism by freehand dentistry, and that's the result. Yet another case of a lower all-on-4 with multi-unit abutments. You can see the multi-unit abutments being placed. Parallelism ends yet again. That is the verification jig being placed. The result, immediate temporaries, immediate result. Immediately we had given such results. Coming to the digital planning in the lab, let me show you yet another case where we did an all-on-6 in the upper and an all-on-6 in the lower. And we had given a mallow frame in the both arches, the maxillary and the mandibular, both had mallow frames and zirconia crowns being delivered. And once this has been made, this is how our lab designs the ExaCAD designs. Then coming to the framework, that is a framework mallow frame inserted into the patient mouth. You can appreciate the mallow frame being inserted. And the final outcome, we have fixed the, you can see on this mallow frame, we have completely fixed with zirconia crowns. Very good result, very well appreciated by the patients, and we gave back the smile to the patient. And a few common mistakes we go ahead during our early stages is we will not load the cover screw properly. We will not angulate the implant properly. The apex of the implant might hit the adjacent teeth. And here we wouldn't have submerged the implant into bone. It would have been jetting out, not maintaining parallelism during freehand placement. See, these are a few mistakes which we do. If you could do it in a proper way, you can avoid all such things. And the take home to be in a nutshell, just go through it, plan the processes, choose the system, fabricate your own stent, go as per your prosthetic face, give proper instructions to the patient, and instruct the patient not to abuse the implant. And finally, a sneak peek of our Supradental Academy. We were stuck in China in 2019 December. If we would have been there a month late, we would have been caught there. I think we should be waiting for this Vande Bharat flights to bring down back us to India. We were in China, the birthplace of COVID-19 in 2019 December. This is a photo of remembrance. We were in Guangzhou. Ashwin, this is the last slide. 2 more minutes. And that's a few of our work, the mallow frame, the digital planning, and that's during the implant training in our academy. That's the one-day CDE program which we used to conduct. Lovely girls around me. And this was one of the training sessions we had in our academy. This is our training academy room. Once again, China. Remembrance of COVID. Our team. Few of our participants, our hands-on demo during the implant training. And that's our team. A few of our all-on-4 cases. And that's the hands-on. So don't worry about this COVID. Plan when you are ready to go to a supermarket and buy your daily stuff. Why do you worry when you are at dental clinic? Beware of COVID. Everybody says stay home safe, but I say go to work, be safe, and start working. If you follow the good protocols of implantology is like this. You can nail the implant easily. But if you do not follow the protocols, this is going to be like this. You are going to nail the implant on your head.
Here's a first question from Dr. Deepali. Without temporary restoration, is it possible to get proper gingival architecture?
Dr. Deepali, see, the temporary restorations are being done in the anterior region to get the proper gingival architecture, but you don't do temporary restoration mostly in a posterior region. See, when you are speaking about the gingival architecture or the pink part, you have to be very careful. Not necessarily you need to give a temporary restoration to get the proper gingival architecture. You have to plan and place the implant. See, the apicocoronal position of the implant, number one. Number two is the type, length, width of your gingival healing abutment or the gingival healing collar. They decide the type of architecture which you're going to get in your gingiva. If you want to have a narrow and a long, gingival architecture, you need to go with a narrow healing abutment. The healing abutment is going to give you the proper gingival architecture. And in case, if you are not going to follow such properly placed healing abutment, you are going to end up in a processes where you would have black triangles. You would lose your interdental papilla. So some cases you need to have a temporary restoration. If not possible, you would have to choose the proper gingival healing abutment. In case of a posterior, you need to have a wide healing abutment. In case of an anterior, depending on the tooth, choose the proper width of your healing abutment. Your healing abutment, if placed properly, if your implant is apicocoronally placed properly, you will definitely get a proper gingival architecture. You need not necessarily play with your pink ceramics in such case.
Thank you, sir, for your very elaborative answer. And there's a question from Tanushri. What is maloframe?
Maloframe is nothing but, see, when you go wrong, or in some cases, you would have to place the implant in such a way that it is either labial or it is projecting out in a unfavorable direction. In such cases, what we do is we initially make a frame where you would have, tooth which are mimicking your prosthetic cuttings. So in the images where you saw, the screw exit was labially placed, but you can see the frame had tooth cutting sort of metal parts. So what we do is we fix the frame. The screw exit is somewhere else, but you have the frame containing the future prosthetic the abutments. So on that frame, you will fix the zirconia crowns. So that is called as a mallow frame. So mallow frames would help you to correct if you have gone wrong in your implant placement.
Okay, sir. Thank you. The next question is from Dr. Rahul. What is the difference between various systems like Dentium, Ostem, Korean system? So he is asking which is the best, which is in best affordable price.
The systems like Korean systems, they basically go with the conical hex connection. They have a conical internal hex. The Israeli counterparts, such as beautiful implant systems like Norris, Adden, those systems have an internal hex connection. The only difference between them is the type of connection. All of them have good engineered CAD/CAM implants. They have good, surface treated ones. The basic difference lies in the connection. Korean's system has a conical hex. The Israeli ones have the internal hex. But basically, I prefer to go with the Dentium implant, which I feel is a cost affordable. It's a very affordable implant. Number one. Number two, all the components you name A to Z are readily available in India. Just give a phone call, the next day the components are. So I prefer Dentium.